Hi guys, Rory here doing the United States Grand Prix recap 2015. It's about half an hour after the race finished. I think I know all the facts now. This time, like last time, the result wasn't really decided because of Kimi Räikkönen's naughtiness. But I think this week everything's pretty clean, so we'll go with what we know. Championship's over now. Lewis Hamilton, world champion 2015. Sort of knew that from race 1, 2, I don't know, I feel like that for a long time now. But it's finally confirmed. No funny business. And to be honest, he's deserved it this year. I'm on record as not being his #1 fan, but you know, I don't think I've ever denied that he is a properly good racing driver. I just maybe don't think he's the Messiah. But that's a topic for a different day. This isn't the day to shit on him. It was a great race. You know, it ended much the same as so many races do, with Hamilton first, Rosberg second, Vettel third. But the journey was far more exciting than any of the previous this year. And I think that's one of the things. It sort of brings me back to another one of those things that I think genuine F1 fans feel more than, and it's a difficult thing to explain to people that don't really watch, like how the same guy could win every week, and that's not inherently boring because the journey is what makes it interesting. And the journey today was almost too exciting at times. I'm still not entirely sure what happened, but we'll try and unwrap it as we go. So it started. Rosberg was on pole after a strange qualifying this morning rather than Saturday, and going to the first corner, he got a bad start. But it looked to me like Lewis Hamilton ran him off the road. Now, I might get shit for saying this. It might be me putting on my he's a very naughty boy glasses, but it didn't look to me like I know you. No, he had the corner. It was his corner. He's entitled to take as much room as he likes because he's in first place. But it didn't look to me like he had turned enough to actually make the corner, and there was no reason to not. So it seemed like he was just trying to muscle his way through and get it done there, rather than have Rosberg maybe cut back on the next corner or all sorts of things like that. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly conspiratorial, but it seemed like he didn't have to hit him at all, and yet he did. But no investigation was done, so let's just say I'm reading far too much into it, and it was an honest mistake, or Rosberg was being a numpty, whatever. And from there, it wasn't all plain sailing. With various different virtual and real safety cars for different incidents. Hamilton ended up, I think he was about 4th at one point. Both Red Bulls had got past him. Rosberg got back past him. All sorts of trouble. And then there was a moment late in the race when it almost looked like the race had completely been thrown away. Because Vettel was on the medium tyres. He wasn't going to have to. At that time, we didn't believe he was going to have to pit again, and he was about 10. He was about 10 seconds behind Hamilton, I think it was, or so. So they were telling him you need to gain another 10 seconds on him to make the strategy work. And Rosberg had already pitted. So Rosberg pitted with enough pace to get past Vettel. So it looked like Rosberg had basically been given the obvious and winning strategy, and that Hamilton had been done in by not in a conspiratorial manner, but his team hadn't given him the optimum strategy. As it turned out, there was then another virtual safety car. Was it actually might have been a real one? There was too many. I can't remember what happened each time. I didn't write it down because this is not a professional production. just something I like to do, to sort of air my grievances. Which is that really, this is what, like, if you think this is going to be the perfect journalistic summation of the events, I'm sorry it's not. It's really a chance for me to air any sort of lingering thoughts I have without having to pester my mates. But it looked to me like he was destined to finish maybe third, at best second, and really not first. But he managed to get that extra pit stop in. He was lying, and then he was sort of. He managed to get ahead of Vettel from it because of when everyone's going under the safety car, they're much slower. So pitting, it was under the virtual one in a minute, I think. They're going slower, so you lose less time going through pits. So overall, it worked out for him. But then he was chasing down Nico Rosberg, and Rosberg just made one big mistake, and he got past him, and he won. And because Vettel was in third place, that meant the championship was won and done. And he's now a 3-time world champion, along with the likes of Lauda, Piquet, Jackie Stewart, Ayrton Senna, even probably the one that he will point out most. So that's not bad company to be in, and I don't think it's undeserved. I think he's won a race every single year he's driven in Formula 1. That's nothing to be sniffed at. He's always been one of the fastest guys out there. I think there might be a man currently driving a red car that, at his best, is on par, if not slightly faster, and maybe has a little bit more tenacity. But he's comfortably in the top 1 or 2. And that is you're never going to get a situation where both him and Sebastian Vettel are in the same car, because it's not in either of their interests to do that. So we'll never really know, and I think 3 titles is a perfectly reasonable haul to have. He's still got plenty of time to add more. I know some will say it sort of undermines the legacy of other drivers. You see it a lot, especially on Twitter. You see people saying, "Oh, but Ayrton Senna, you can't use stats to say anyone's better than him ever." It's like, yeah, well, okay. That doesn't mean that achieving the same as him isn't significant. So, I think, put my grievances aside, I think he's a bloody good racing driver and he's doing very well for himself. And most importantly, the thing that Lewis Hamilton has got now that he didn't have in 2011, and before then at least, is that calm-headedness. He's stopped thinking the world is out to get him, I hope. And he's got more down to his racing. He doesn't make silly mistakes anymore. And ultimately, that's how you win these titles. Is there's never. I don't think. You could make up a list of every single driver in the history of the sport that has won a world title without the best car on the grid, and it's one name long, and it's Keke Rosberg, and that year was bizarre. So, you can't expect him to. Nobody's going to be able to outperform their car to the point that it will win them a championship. That's just an unrealistic expectation. What you have to do is get in that situation which he is now, which is in the fastest car, and make very, very few mistakes. And I think if you look through this season especially, there's very little he's done wrong. And as much as that sounds like a boring way to say, oh, he deserves to win the title because he's not done anything wrong, you want to talk about great victories, whatever. That's all his job is to do is make less mistakes than his teammate, or drive a lot faster than his teammate, and he's done both. So that's title 1, and that's how all titles are from now till the end of time will be won. As for his teammate, Nico Rosberg, I think has not done the sport many favours. Now I think he's a perfectly nice guy. I don't have anything against him. I don't want to start a witch hunt on him. I don't think he deserves some of the criticism he gets. Like, I don't think there's anything malicious or deliberate about what, if we're going to be harsh, boils down to a certain amount of incompetence on his part, which is just, he is not the greatest person in the world at his job, which is effectively what he would need to be to have taken this title any further. You know, he got to the last race last year, so he clearly, he took Lewis to the final Grand Prix of the year last year with the title not yet decided. So he clearly someone of some skill and some talent. He just isn't quite at the level of his teammate, and that's fine. Why I despair is a pattern has emerged since the latter half of last year, where every time Nico Rosberg gets into a position where he could potentially win a race, he'll make mistakes. Now, I like. Now this again, I don't have the stats in front of me. This isn't that kind of show, but I cannot think of a single race in the last year and a half where Rosberg beat Hamilton on track. Like, and I don't even mean overtook him or beat him in some sort of strategy way. I don't believe he's won a race in a while that Hamilton finished, because I think he's got a certain amount of a mental block, and he doesn't believe he can beat him, and he knows ultimately when you're in a two-man fight for the title, at some point you're going to have to beat the other man on track. And I think it gets in his brain, and he can't do it. You know, the talent is there. He's clearly a very fast racing driver, and we've seen he can do clean races and not make any mistakes all weekend long when he's in the right place mentally. He's not been in that place for a while, and we saw yet again, like, today the race was on a plate for him, and he went off and Hamilton got past him, and he never bit back, and it was far too common now. So for the sport's sake, like, I think the same thing happened to Mark Webber. I think Mark Webber had one chance to win the world title in 2010, and then the 3 subsequent years of him being in the same team as the champion, I don't think he was ever going to beat Vettel from that point on. I think once you missed that one chance, it was in his head then. So I hope for the sake of the sport that next year Ferrari or Williams or even Red Bull, because we don't know what kind of engine Red Bull are going to have yet, build a car capable of competing for the title, just so that we can have another face up front, because ultimately that's how Hamilton will win a 4th and a 3rd in a row if it's Mercedes out front again, because I can't see how Rosberg can compete with that. As for 3rd place, Sebastian Vettel again. He started 14th. He's a damn good driver, that man. I think a lot of people, and this is the same for everyone throughout history, you try and find a reason that somebody isn't great when they're winning, because you won every week for 4 years, it's boring, so let's take him down a few pegs by saying it's all the car, and he's not as talented as guys much further down the field. And ultimately it's just nonsense. Yes, without having the fastest car on the grid, he wouldn't be a 4-time world champion. But as I said, the list of people that would win championships without the fastest car on the grid is one man long, and even then, I don't think it was the man that did it in particular as much as the crazy season that it was in. So that's the fact of life. And what it is he is a phenomenal driver of a car. Yeah, he overtakes brilliantly. When he has a chance, he takes it. As we saw today, he can put pressure by using alternative strategies to influence the result of a race where he is not fast enough to win. And I think for any F1 fan that isn't specifically a Lewis Hamilton fan, you have to be looking for that in a driver at the moment. No, he's not the most exciting human being in the world. He's a bit media shy. People might be a bit sick of German world champions after Schumacher, but damn is he good at driving. Speaking of damn good drivers, Max Verstappen was 4th. Second time this year he's finished 4th. Someone get that boy. Like, I really hope Toro Rosso doesn't go under next year, because him and Carlos Sainz need to still be in Formula 1. We can't be messing about with not having them in race seats. They need to be there. And I'm driving terribly in this game. Next person on my list of notes, Daniel Ricciardo did lead the race at one point, as did Danny Kvyat as well. Both those Red Bull drivers deserve a lot of credit for the way they drove today. And to be honest, it does prove the point Red Bull have been making all year, that if they had a decent engine in the back of that car, they'd be very fast, because when it's wet or mixed conditions, the downforce in that car is undeniable. They had the confidence to drive, and they were dicing it with the Mercedes. But then once conditions improved, they just couldn't handle it on the straights. Now, obviously, perhaps they've got their own reasons. You know, they could easily have sorted out these engines things themselves. I'm not saying they should have gone into the factory in Paris and demanded they tinker with them properly, but they've had they don't seem to be the best engine partners in the world from an engine point of view. I think they don't give Renault the credit when they deserve the credit, and as much as it sounds childish, I think the lack of credit Renault got for those 4 world titles perhaps led to a less impressive engine this time around, just because humans rely on confidence. They would have liked to have been given credit for some of their work. But then there was an unfortunate mistake, and in the end, I think Ricciardo finished 10th and only picked up the 1 point, which again, it shows you in mixed conditions they were the fastest car on the grid, and in the dry they just go backwards. Ah well. And then the last person I want to get to as a just well done, Alex Rossi. Home Grand Prix, only his 3rd race. I think there was 8 retirements around him, but he kept it on the track. He kept going. Now, at one point he was ahead of Felipe Nasr on merit for a long time, and that is an achievement. As much as it's sort of treating them with kids' gloves, and being last but one on the grid is shouldn't be seen as a great achievement. It's so much better than it could be, than it has been, and it's great to see. I would have loved it for him to have got a point, but it leaves room for improvement next week. The 12th was brilliant. Let's get 11th or 10th next time out. Just keep going. I know it was your home race, but you can keep plugging away. But now I just have 2 sort of technical issues that I'm been thinking of this weekend that I want to get to, and then we'll be done. I realise I've probably been dragging this out longer than I should have done, but it's Sunday night. I'm a bit. My brain doesn't really work on Sunday nights, I'll be honest. but I also have to do this now because I can't. I'm too busy tomorrow, and by Tuesday I'll have forgotten what happened. So you got to do it now. So the virtual safety car, I think, proved today to be a little farcical. Now the reason is everyone has to drive around under a certain lap time, which means everybody keeps their lead and everything, and they are driving in a sort of a safe manner. And theoretically, it seems like a brilliant idea. The problem is, what happened today was a vested interest came in for the guy leading to hold up guys behind him, which I've always, it's one of those not very racing ideas of I'm going to go deliberately slowly so that someone else wins. And Lewis Hamilton was not driving as fast as the clock would allow him under the first virtual safety car, yet Danny Kvyat behind him was not allowed to overtake, because you can't go, because overtaking under the virtual safety car is definitely not allowed. So the problem was he was then being backed into the man behind him, which was Daniel Ricciardo, who was then being backed into the man behind him, which was Nico Rosberg. So Daniel Ricciardo should have initially had a 3-second lead over Nico Rosberg, 2.8. And theoretically everybody's driving the same speed, so he should still be at least 2 seconds ahead of the man behind him when they start racing again. Instead, Rosberg manages to sneak right up on the back of him, and when they go green again, because Hamilton is still going slowly and still holding them up, I don't think the Red Bull drivers quite noticed that they could race yet, and Rosberg sneaked past. And yeah, it was a bit covert, and I think it's an issue with the rules. And I hope what they do is they sort of say, you got to drive under this time, but you also got to drive over this time and keep the so that the gap is also adhered to, or just get rid of it and let everybody know that it's, because it doesn't really do its job if it doesn't achieve the thing that makes it different from the real safety car, which is the getting rid of the gaps. And the only other thing I have to say, and this is really a complete sort of technical minefield that I have, why do we have extreme wet tyres in Formula 1? I have never seen anyone, there is very rarely a session in which anyone runs in, like, Friday practice, they just don't go out if it's wet. They don't want to ruin the car because they don't want to rebuild it. There's no encouragement to actually get out and drive, so they don't. And driving in the wet is dangerous no matter how insignificant the session is, so they just don't bother. And come race time, they're never on the extreme wets for more than a lap or two before it's deemed too dangerous to drive. Now, I'm not saying, come on, take the risks. Now, because I perfectly understand the problem with a lot of the not running this weekend, especially not doing qualifying on Saturday, was the air ambulance couldn't get off the ground, and if the ambulance can't fly, they can't race, because that's putting the drivers in far more danger than they should be, because if you can't get to hospital as fast as possible, you're doing them a disservice. So I'm perfectly fine with that, and I'm also perfectly fine with the teams not running them because they can go faster on the other tyres. But why not go more mild? Because of the safety concerns, why not either produce, this is where the helicopter comes into play and probably says you can't do this, is produce a more extreme wet tyre so that you could run in more extreme conditions. But if you can't get a helicopter off the ground, that's a completely different story, and then don't do that. The other option is go far more marginal on the intermediates, so that there is still 2 tyre choices in wet conditions. The intermediates are closer to slick tyres, and then the extreme wets are slightly more conservative versions of the intermediates now, then you're not carrying an entire set of tyres to every Grand Prix that you're never going to use, and you're not getting in this awkward situation where one set of tyres is simply too slow to ever want to race on. I don't know, I think it might also be more, brings more strategy into play, it brings more potential excitement, more risk takers. It's encouraging everything that you should want from Formula 1. Now, I did also suggest earlier this weekend that maybe races should have a half time, but that was just being silly and sort of saying, oh, I'll have another start, make it people conserve less, all sorts of. But that was being said. But I genuinely think a less conservative extreme wet, as bizarre as that might sound, should be a seriously looked at situation. Anyway, I think that's it. Congratulations, Lewis Hamilton, on your third world title. Not that he'll bother watching this, but let's hope it's closer next year. I think we're done.